Okay, so now that we've got an understanding of what TCP/IP is and what NAT and the proxy is, I want to look at configuring some of our settings on Windows 10. Okay, so first off, you're going to again need to realize that you have the old way of doing it and the new way of doing it. Remember, we have the settings app and then we have control panel. Okay, so we'll start and we'll look at the new way of getting in and configuring our settings. Okay, we can do that by clicking Start and then going to Settings. It's going to bring up the Settings app. Okay, and then from there you're going to notice there is a button that's going to show up called Network and Internet. So we'll find the Network and Internet button right here. We'll click on that, and then if you got an Ethernet adapter, which is a wired adapter, you would click Ethernet. If you were doing wireless, you would have a Wi-Fi adapter here. So I'm going to choose Ethernet, and this is where I can change my configuration. Okay, so if I wanted to change my TCP/IP settings, I would click Change Adapter Options here, and then you'll notice it's just going to redirect you to Control Panel. Okay, so my network adapter card that's enabled right now, you can kind of ignore these other ones right now, but this one right here is my internal network adapter, which is connected to my little virtual network that I'm using for my VMs, my virtual machines that I'm using to teach this class with. So if I want, I can double click that, and then I can click Properties here, and then from there I can manage my TCP/IP settings. There's TCP/IP4 for you there. There's 6. Okay. I also want to point out while we're here that you have a couple things here. You have a link layer topology discovery responder, link layer topology discovery mapper, and this protocol called LLDP. These two things here are what allows Windows machines to announce to other Windows machines that they're there, and allow them to find each other. The mapper lets your Windows 10 machine find other Windows machines, and the responder lets you respond to other Windows machines. If you did not want other Windows machines to see you, be able to announce and request that you announce that you're there, you can get rid of the responder. The responder makes it where Windows 10 announces that it's there. If you turn that off, you'll no longer announce that you're there. If you do not want your Windows 10 computer being able to find other Windows machines for whatever reason, you could turn that off. Of course, you can also manage all this through your firewall as well, but I just wanted to point that out. That's what LLDP is, this link layer topology discovery responder and discovery mapper. The protocol here is what does that. Okay, but here's TCP/IP4. I'm going to click that, going to go to Properties, and as you can see, I've done what's called a static IP address. Okay, now I've set a static IP address because I have a little bitty network here that I'm working with, but in the real world, most of the time people are getting their address from a service called DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. A static address, when you put that in, it's going to make it where your computer's IP address never changes. It's always going to stay the same. Okay, your computer's always going to stay the same. So you'll notice here that I've got my IP address, my subnet mask, and my default gateway. My default gateway is my router. And my DNS server, which is what does the named IP address resolution for me, is also this address. And that is actually this server, my NYC DC1, which is my domain controller. So I just switched over just now to my domain controller. And if I actually go here and I look at the TCP/IP properties on this machine, so Start, Settings, and I go to Network and Internet, Ethernet, Change Adapter Options. Oh, on the domain controller, you'll notice it'll kick back at you if you try to do it straight from there. It's a security measure. Go to Change Advanced Sharing. All right, I can go to this Network and Sharing Center, Change Adapter Settings. I know it's a bunch of clicks. Notice that my my domain controller has 2 NICs in this case. He has an external NIC and he has an internal NIC. The external NIC is getting out to the internet. The internal NIC is what is communicating with my little private network. So if I look at the private network TCP/IP properties, you'll notice that it is the 192.168.0.10. Okay. For DNS, he's pointing to his loopback address, which just means he's pointing to himself. The loopback is pointing to yourself. Okay. Now, this address here is the one that is connected to the internet. All right. Now, I actually, on my little server, not to turn this into a server class, I just wanted to show you guys real quick. If I go to Tools and I click on a routing or remote access service, you're going to notice that I've installed NAT, and I have the internal NIC and the external NIC, And so my little Windows 10 computer is pointing to this internal NIC as its router, and NAT is doing routing for me right now. Okay. Now, I'm not a proxy server. That doesn't mean I'm a proxy. I'm just doing NAT. Proxy has a bunch of other features that I talked about in my previous lecture. Okay. Now, what if I wanted to support DHCP? I could install DHCP on my server, and I would have a tool here called DHCP, and I could hand out addresses to my computers. But right now, I'm just doing a little static address. So I'm going to jump back over to my my Windows 10 computer here. Okay, he's got a static address. His address will never change. It'll just stay the same. If I did have a DHCP service on my network, I could switch to obtain an IP address automatically. Now, I want you guys to look right here. Look closely. This alternate configuration tab appears when I do that. Notice it's not there when I change the static. It is there when I change to obtain. Okay, so alternate configuration is what's going to kick in whenever your computer is set to get an address from DHCP and it announces that it needs an address, but let's say nobody responds. Let's say your network's DHCP server is down and it doesn't respond. At that point, your computer is going to use something called APIPA, Automatic Private IP Addressing, and it's going to give itself an address, a 169.254. You may remember my little NAT diagram that I drew, that it showed you that 169.254. So everybody would, if I had 1,000 computers boot up and they all got 169.254 addresses, and the last two octets would be randomly generated. Granted, whenever a computer randomly generates an address, it announces itself to make sure there's no conflict, and if there is a conflict, it'll change it. But my point is that you'll get one of those addresses, and really the only thing this is going to achieve is it's going to let your computers talk to each other with one of those addresses that they give themselves. The downside, they're not going to be able to get out to the internet. They're not going to be able to go through a router. So APIPA is not really a good thing. Your best bet in the real world is if you're dealing with DHCP, you would want to have two DHCP servers so that if one failed, you had a backup. Okay, redundancy. Alternatively, you could do user configured. This is a static address that you can fail over to. So if you put a static address in, it would make it where your computer would announce that it's there to a DHCP server. If no DHCP server responded, then it would move and use this address. So that's what APIPA is, and this user configured address. Okay, all right. So I'm not actually going to configure those settings right now on my machine. I'm going to leave it alone and stick with what I got. All right. So now what I want to show you how you could have gotten in through here with Control Panel. So if I come down here to search, I'm going to type the word control. We'll come up to Control Panel. And once you get into Control Panel, we'll switch over to Large Icons, and then we would go to Network and Sharing Center. Okay, so we'll go there, and then we'll click Change Adapter Settings, and then here we are. Same place we were a second ago. So I can double-click here, go to Properties, and I can configure my IP settings here. Okay, now the last thing I want to show you on this is how I can set myself up with a proxy server if I wanted. So if your company was using a proxy server, I want to tell you this. Your proxy server can actually do this thing called an automatic settings script, which is where it will computers can boot up and realize there's a proxy server and go to the proxy server. Your DHCP can help with that as well. But if you wanted to manually point a Windows 10 computer to a proxy server, okay, you can do that. So I'm going to go Start. I'm going to go to Settings. I'm going to go to Network and Internet, and then you're going to see Proxy right here. So I'm going to click Proxy. At that point, come down here to the bottom. I could switch this on. I could put in, if my proxy server was at this address here, 0.1, and then whatever the port is. A lot of times the port is 8080. You would put that in, okay? And so then you would click Save, and at that point you would have your proxy server turned on. So pretty easy enough. It is something you need to be aware of for the exam. But what a proxy server is and then where you would go to do it. But pretty easy to turn that on. I don't have a proxy server, so I'm just going to leave that turned off. Okay. But hopefully that gives you an idea of going in and setting your TCP/IP settings, and then I showed you a little bit of NAT, and then as well as how you would turn on the proxy server manually if you needed to.